And we are live. So, let's see. It is hammer time. It is 8 p.m. and I'm here with my good buddy Ryan Daly. We sat down a few days ago to go through another Hammer classic, which was The Curse of the Werewolf. I probably hadn't seen that movie easily in 30 years. So, without, are you ready to get into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, man.
I'm about to have a nervous breakdown. My head really hurts. If I don't find a way out of here, I'm gonna go berserk 'cause I'm crazy, I'm hurt. Head on my shoulders. Going berserk.
So that was the Rollins Band, Nervous Breakdown.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got new music on there.
Covering an old Black Flag tune, and it seemed like an appropriate song for a werewolf movie.
Okay.
You know, werewolves are always a little stressed, especially in human form and, you know, especially in werewolf form. But this book in particular, and if I had been thinking, I would have brought it. It's over in the next room, as you know. Because you gave it to me, is based on the Werewolf of Paris by Guy Endor, which you had purchased.
Yeah.
Do you want to take maybe 60 seconds and
Sure.
give us a quick nickel tour of the book?
Sure. Guy Endor was a very respected sci-fi and horror author. The book was published, I believe, in 1933, so 2 years after Todd Browning's Dracula came out. This is kind of considered the penultimate werewolf book. Stoker wrote Dracula, Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, Endor wrote The Werewolf of Paris. If you get a chance to read it, please do, because it's not just a horror novel, it's a historical novel. And it kind of has a Jekyll and Hyde vibe to it. And it's easy to read. It takes place during the when the Russians were trying to like invade France or something in the 1800s at some point. I don't know if it's around Les Mis time or before or after that.
I'll tell you what, you keep talking. I'll be right back. We're going to go grab the book. Give me 30 seconds.
Yeah. But I encourage anybody who's listening and who's interested in it, because there has never been, well, I shouldn't say there's never been a werewolf book written. There's been a few to my knowledge, but this one is kind of the first one that I know about. Straight werewolf book. Okay. They don't call him Wolfman or anything like this. This was before the Wolfman, before the Lon Chaney Jr. Wolfman. This was Werewolf. But it's a very interesting story, and we'll get into it some more as we talk about the movie. You know, there it is right there. You can get it on Amazon. I got it for pretty cheap. It's back in print.
It's not a particularly thick book, so
it's not.
Like you got to read 1400s of Les Mis. It's about a little under 300 pages from the looks of it. I might start it this weekend and see if I can kill it over a weekend.
Yeah, you should. It's like we could discuss it as we go along with the movie too. I mean, it's you know, as far as the movie goes, they only took like one or two scenes from the book and put them in the movie. They kept a lot of the themes, though. A lot of the same themes in the movie are in the book.
Okay.
Right?
So this is also, and we should mention, it's the first werewolf film to be shot in color.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, really, there are several werewolf movies from Universal that are happening. You know, in the 40s, you have Chaney's version with the Wolfman. But before that, you have other versions, you know, Werewolf of London, and these sorts of movies that come out at that time.
When was Werewolf of London?
35, I think.
Okay. Who was in that? Do you know?
Oh, God. No, off the top of my head, I don't remember, but it's actually quite a damn movie.
Okay.
It's actually quite spooky.
Okay.
There's a bit of I can see the scene from American Werewolf where they're in the pub and they hear the werewolf howling. I can see where they got that from a particular scene in Werewolf of London.
Oh, I remember you telling me that. Yeah.
Talk for one more second. I'll go grab it. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Hold on.
Okay. So yeah. I'll wait for him. But yeah. Do yourself a favor, werewolf fans out there, and get the book. I haven't read Guy Endor's other stuff. This was actually adapted twice. This movie, Curse of the Werewolf, and there was another one, I believe, in the 70s. I don't know what it was called, but it was another adaptation of The Werewolf of Paris.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've got this legacy collection from
There it is.
The Wolfman.
Yeah.
And it's got other features. Yeah, Werewolf of London was 1935.
Okay.
Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, of course, in 43.
Yeah.
You've got She-Wolf of London, 1946.
Wow.
And of course, Chaney's original movie is from 1941.
Yep.
I think after that, you still have other American classics like, if you can believe, Michael Landon, starring in a movie called I Was a Teenage Werewolf.
Yep.
Which I actually thought was quite a frightening movie when I saw it at a very young age.
Well, that actually achieved cult status when it appeared on Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Well, yeah.
I think I saw that episode. It was a good one.
It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible. Well, they had a broad audience.
Yeah.
So if a movie got released out there, there's a possibility that people that were fans of that show would have wanted to, know more about it or see it or own it or, back then.
It's funny. I've never seen. I still to this day haven't seen the Wolfman, the Lon Chaney one.
Oh, really?
No, never saw it.
No, you'll have to. You can borrow this one.
Yeah. I'd like to. And the thing I was thinking about this the other day. I think this one is. I'm talking about the movie we saw, Curse of the Werewolf.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen that many werewolf movies, so I'm speaking from my limited knowledge of it. But it seems to me like in a lot of werewolf movies, they can't push like the gore and stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like when a werewolf kills somebody, he tears them up. And I mean, in this one, we saw some blood. We saw a little bit. It was a little gory for its time. But, I mean, in a lot of werewolf movies, like, they hold back, I mean, I'm not saying I want to see blood spraying all over the walls or something. But, like, you're being torn up by, like, what's basically an animal. All right?
You're looking at a movie that is 60 years old this year.
Well, yeah.
This movie, Curse of the Werewolf, the first werewolf movie ever shot in color. Is 60 years old this year. For its time, it's more graphic than what we're used to. I mean, especially if you compare it to, the Wolfman, Chaney's The Wolfman. It's an absolutely bloodless movie. In fact, the werewolf strangles people. And then later, you say, "Oh my God!" The people are saying, "Oh my God, his throat's been torn out," but you never see anything. This took it a step further, and so you do have a little bit of gore and a little more gristle. You have a little more, substance. You get the feeling, and this werewolf looks like, he kind of wants to take a bite out of you, which we'll get into in a little bit. But you're not quite at the part where you get to 1981 with Landis, where that monster is just tearing people apart on the moors.
Oh yeah, that. Oh yeah.
By the time you get to 1981, which is 40 years old this year. By the time you get to American Werewolf, then you start to get into the more graphic, filming of the attacks and that sort of thing.
Let me ask you this: I've been confused by this for 40 some odd years. Would you consider an American Werewolf in London a comedy or a straight horror movie?
I consider it a horror comedy.
I mean, there's a little bit of comedy, like with his dead friend who keeps decaying.
It's not a horror. I mean, it's a horror comedy. It has real moments of horror in it,
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Landis is definitely, and many of the true werewolf fans still, and like myself,
Yeah.
feel that, you know, perhaps the best we're a little jaded about the fact that, you know, maybe the best werewolf movie of all time is still a comedy.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, and it has those comedic elements. Like we're still waiting for the epic werewolf movie that we get.
And I think that's what I mean too by, like, you know, holding back and stuff. I mean, we've had tons and tons and tons and tons of werewolf movies over the years. Some good, some bad.
I'd say a lot more bad than good.
Yeah, but we haven't gotten there yet to that real knockout, like, holy shit. You know, kind of werewolf movie.
We've been waiting and we've been waiting and we've been waiting, you know, and you get another Dracula interpretation, or, you know, you get another Frankenstein. And, you know, to be honest, I wouldn't even mind necessarily a new Jekyll Hyde, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, you know, and I think too, believe it or not, I think the werewolf isn't as popular.
I think it's the second. It's not as popular as the vampire.
No, he's not as popular as Dracula or Frankenstein. No. Every time you talk about, you got Dracula and Frankenstein at the top, they get top billing, and then the Wolfman always comes after that.
I think, well, no, I would disagree with you there. I think the werewolf takes second place.
Okay, all right.
I'd say that the werewolf takes second place.
You think in popularity?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
I think so. I think the werewolf takes second place.
Maybe Frankenstein came down a few notches.
When's the last time you've seen, I mean, a Frankenstein interpretation? But I mean, you do get, even if you're watching something, and I hate to use this example, but even if you're watching something like Twilight, you know, those are werewolves. So you've got vampires and werewolves. If you look at like the Underworld series.
Oh, Underworld, yeah.
You know, you've got vampires and werewolves.
I forgot about Underworld.
Yeah, those are solid movies.
I only ever saw the first one.
I've got the entire box set on Blu-ray.
So,
but let's get back.
Let's
get on track. All
right.
So we've got this movie, and we're set, you know, hundreds of years ago or a few hundred years ago, in a feudal system of government. And one of the things that I was remarking on was how hellish it must have been.
Oh, yeah.
Because you've got the story of this beggar who sort of wanders into this town on the day that the feudal lord is getting married. And the feudal lord he makes the tragic mistake of going to the lord's home in the wedding to beg for money, thinking, or, you know, beg for anything, food, drink, you know, thinking that this man is going to be generous. And it turns out he's just an evil bastard.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he makes fun of the man. He makes him bark like a dog and sing and dance just for like a scrap of food. And you see him there with his wife, played by Josephine Llewellyn. You know, again, you know, just this man, he just looks like a scumbag, and he is a scumbag, and, you know, he's marrying somebody much younger than him, which doesn't necessarily put me off, except for the fact that he's such a dirtbag.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and for you hardcore James Bond fans, the evil lord is played by Anthony Dawson, who played Professor Dent in Dr. No. And Q is also in the movie, Desmond Llewellyn, in a small part as like a footman in that very first scene. So this was a year before Dr. No, right? Because Dr. No was 62, I believe.
I thought it was 60.
No, it's 62.
Okay, so the year before.
So yeah, and it was a treat to see those guys. And Anthony Dawson's always good at playing those kind of jerk characters, you know.
Well, what ends up happening to the beggar is that, you know, the wife wants him taken care of. And he's like, yeah, I'll take care of him. So he takes care of him by throwing him in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he's such an evil bastard that he throws him in prison and just forgets about it. He ends up spending his entire life in prison until he dies.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And I don't want to spoil it for you because I'll let you read it, but the book is slightly different. Okay. With this guy. I won't tell you how he gets in jail and all that stuff, or gets locked up. But yeah, he is made to exist only on raw meat. You know, and that's
don't tell me.
No, that's in the movie. That's in the movie.
I never saw that.
In the
Well, they give it meat.
Yeah,
It didn't look like it was raw. They didn't
Yeah,
specify
well,
that it
it's
was raw.
but that's what I think is interesting about in this movie, how this guy kind of becomes a werewolf by just being in the cell for so long.
Yeah, he
And
becomes a beast.
Yeah, he's just eating this meat, and he just becomes all unkempt and hairy and everything else. It's really interesting.
Well, what ends up happening, I think, over the decades that he spends in prison, with no socialization, and, he never doesn't seem like he has any opportunity to bathe, or they just throw him in this one room for the rest of his life, and I think eventually he just loses his mind. So he reverts to some sort of bestial state.
Yeah,
and there's this woman here who, as a child, the jailer's daughter feeds him.
Mm-hmm.
And so one day the jailer's daughter grows up and becomes the lovely Yvonne Marino, who's a British actress who was, how should we put this, hired a lot in the British cinema because she has this dark sort of look to play either an Italian or a Spanish actress.
Oh, okay.
And she had a very short and limited sort of career because her husband was in Hollywood. And so I think she ended up quitting her acting career by the time she was in her mid to late 30s so she could go live in Hollywood and be with her husband rather than pursue a British career. She's still alive today. She's 83.
Oh, wow.
Yvonne Marino. Now, I want to get into something real quick. I don't know, and we talked about this. The way that, all right, let me put it to you this way, and I'll revamp it from last week. These are the brides that were in Todd Browning's Dracula.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you see what you kind of get. They have this black and white sort of dead and heavy makeup around the eye, almost like a precursor to like George Romero's like Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
They kind of look dead.
Yeah.
Okay. By the time 1958 comes along, you've got the uncredited vampire woman from Horror of Dracula, who's played by Valerie Gaunt. But you can see there's a significant difference, and Bill and I were talking about this when we covered Horror of Dracula. Hammer really sexualized their women.
Yes, they did.
You can't tell this, necessarily from looking at this, but as I said last week, she was just bursting out of that top.
But however, they and I'm just to go along with this picture here.
She's about 25 in this.
Yeah, the sexualization of the female vampires, that's Stoker. I mean, that's what the female vampires did. They seduced the men.
Right, but the visual, what I'm talking about in terms of its visualization.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Brought into people's homes.
Yeah.
Is much more apparent here. Now, here you have, we have Evelyn Ankers.
Mm-hmm.
And Evelyn Ankers is the female lead in Chaney's The Wolfman.
Okay.
And you can see she's very conservatively dressed. It looks like a picture of your grandmother. And this is a picture from her kind of on the set of The Wolfman, but she's the love interest for Chaney. But then Hammer definitely takes it up a notch with Yvonne Marino, who's just, again, spilling out of that dress. It's and then you've got, Josephine Llewellyn in the very beginning. I mean, she's doing kind of the same thing. Hammer had these sexualized women up against these very stiff British men.
Well, and that's the thing too. I think also you look at it two ways. Number one, these movies, you also have to think when most of these Hammer movies at the time were probably being targeted at teenage boys and young boys who liked horror, high school boys, college kids, whatever. All right. Also, and I told you this, I was on one of the Bond movies, I think it's Goldfinger, and Guy Hamilton, the director, was talking about the scene where, the girl is on the bed, the gold girl, and she's naked, and they have the pillow strategically covering her butt. And that's what Guy Hamilton said. He said the American censors are absolutely constipated about sex.
Hmm.
He said, and it's so weird in England because it's the other way around. Like in England, they're okay with with some sex and some boobs and stuff, but they're not. They don't like violence.
Yeah, they don't like violence.
It's weird. And but then in America, it's the other way around. We're okay with violence, but the sex is taboo.
I was just saying this the other day. Maybe it was with Bill. I can't remember the last time I've seen a movie that had nudity in it.
Not anymore. You have to. Not anymore. No, you have to. I haven't seen one in a long time. You have to. It's very rare nowadays.
Yeah, it's hard to find. Especially in horror movies. They used to. I mean, that was just a given that you were going to see. There was going to be gratuitous nudity. Or and a lot of times that's the classic horror mistake.
Or you have the girl who's scantily clad, the bimbo or whatever, who ends up getting killed. Or something like that.
And that's how you know that these people, the teenagers, are having sex. They're going to die. These sorts of things. But now, I mean, not just in horror, but in any movie.
Oh, I know.
When's the last time you've seen any nudity?
I don't know.
It's very strange.
Yeah, it is. But again, it's just it's changing times, and I think Hammer was pretty bold in their movies because that was the 60s. That was the swinging 60s, which was big in London. The sexual liberation and stuff like that was a little.
Well, it's the early. I think they might have been the precursor because this is 61.
Yeah,
this isn't the hippie era.
No, I know. It was kind
horror of Dracula was 58.
Yeah. But see again. The Brits, they weren't concerned with that. I think again, they were okay with that. And again, I think their target audience.
No, I don't want you to misunderstand me. I'm not complaining.
No, I understand.
Okay.
No, I know you're not complaining. Okay. I'm just saying. I think
I'm far from it.
Yeah, I think for the time period again, and I think again, their target audience was boys, was teenage boys. So yeah, you want to throw some TNA at them because that if you look at it from a marketing standpoint, that's the smart thing to do.
Sex sells.
Exactly.
I mean, nowadays maybe you don't need nudity in the movies because you have Instagram.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you can just access something on Pornhub or something like that. It doesn't have quite the draw that it once did. That kind of thing.
Yeah. And I know you did say this when we were watching it. You pointed out that it was very misogynistic.
It is.
Which it is very much so.
I want to get back to the movie for a second.
Yeah.
What ends up happening to this woman is she grows into, and by her I'm talking about Yvonne Marino, who's been feeding this beggar who's been thrown in jail, grows into a woman who rejects the pass of that douchebag lord as he becomes an old man. And so her punishment for doing that is to be thrown in prison herself, where she's raped by the man that she's been feeding her entire life because he's just been reduced to a bestial state after decades in prison. And she's mute anyway, so she doesn't speak. So she ends up getting raped. And then, of course, giving birth to the boy that's eventually going to become the werewolf.
Yeah. And what I like about this, with the whole curse of the werewolf, this was the first time, and this is in the movie, so I'm not spoiling anything from the book, but this is the first time I ever heard an actual curse. As far as not just being, because in the Lon Chaney movie, he's bitten by a werewolf and then he becomes one. Yeah. In this, the poor kid is doomed from the start.
Yeah.
And and it's interesting. Now, I don't know if this has anything to do with any werewolf mythology or folklore, or if Guy Endor made all this stuff up. But basically the curse is if the baby is born on Christmas. That's a bad, if he's a child of rape and he's born on Christmas
and unwanted.
He's automatically a werewolf, and also he has to have hair on his palms and a unibrow. But he's automatically a werewolf. And I like that scene in the movie. Remember when the guy's sitting there and he hears the howl from the room?
Yeah.
And it's the baby howling
before the baby cries. He howls.
Yeah. That was cool. That was cool. So that's what I thought was interesting with the. Yeah, there he is. Was he Leon in the movie?
Yeah, Leon, but the young Leon is played by Justin Walters.
Okay.
And I remember the phrasing from the movie. It's considered an insult to heaven.
Yeah.
For a child of rape to be born on the 25th, which is exactly when he is born, and from the get-go, from the time he's a small child, there's a problem because all the goats and kittens are getting mauled, like from some sort of
every
animal
night.
out there. Yeah, every night.
In and what they think is a wolf goes out and kills these animals and drinks the blood.
Yeah,
and then Leon wakes up with no recollection of what happened.
Yeah.
All right. And just incidentally, he's called Leon because even though it's the book is set in France, the movie's set in Spain. And I looked up why they did that. And apparently there was supposed to be another movie they were going to film that took place in France. And they just didn't feel like building the sets again. So they just put it in Spain.
It was
and called him Leon. Because in the book,
it was going to be something about the Inquisition. Wasn't it?
Yeah. So they left the sets up. And but his name in the book is Bertrand Caillet. And he's Leon Kess something or other in this. It was a C, the last name. But anyway, the kid, he wakes up with no recollection of what anything that's happened. And incidentally, I forget, how did that guy find him? His guardian. Where did he find him?
He found the mother.
That's right. He found the mother.
Yeah. She ran away after she was raped. She ends up murdering that old feudal lord for throwing her in prison.
Yeah.
For no other reason than not wanting to, because he wanted to rape her because, she's beautiful. So he's just a dirty scumbag and he wanted to rape her because he thought he could. So she knifes him and runs away, and they nurse her back to health until she has the baby, and then she dies during childbirth. But of course, in order to prevent these nightmares, his new guardian ends up putting bars on the window, and then one night walks into the room to find out that he's trying to break through the bars to get out into the night to do, what he's been doing all this time.
And they figure it out.
It is one of the creepier scenes to see a little boy like this. And, I've talked about this in a lot of movies. You usually don't get too great a performance out of child actors in horror movies, but this kid did a passable job.
Yeah.
Like I said, you don't get a lot of Linda Blairs. You don't get a lot of Haley Joel Osments. Even the kids from like Jurassic Park. But this kid was passable. He gave a really decent performance, Justin Walters. So I think he deserves some credit. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, the years pass.
Yes.
And Leon grows up to be a young Oliver Reed. There he is, Ollie Reed. He was 23. Yeah. This was his first lead role, the legendary Oliver Reed. And we were talking about this as, a lot of you may know him as one of the great drunks of Hollywood. He did have a huge alcohol problem that was actually kind of tragic.
Yeah.
We were reading about it, and I'm not going to go into that too much, but it hurt his career, I think.
Yeah.
And
it may ultimately have cost him his life.
It
was. I was going to tell you that it was one of the things I didn't want to make light of. Because it is very unfortunate.
It is.
And he was a great performer.
Exactly.
He was a great actor, and his last role, like we talked about, was in Ridley Scott's Gladiator.
Yeah,
I love that movie. And I remember sitting in the theater and seeing that, and then seeing him, and I'm like, holy shit, it's Oliver Reed.
Yeah.
I was so happy.
Yeah,
I was so happy to see Oliver Reed.
And he was a badass. He was one of those badass actors.
Yeah,
and he was a tough guy actor. It is a shame, and I wasn't saying one of the great drunks to make light of it. No, he was. But yes, it's unfortunate what happened to him because he if you know the story, he died in the middle of making Gladiator. And he specifically told Ridley Scott he promised him he wasn't going to drink, but the story goes that he basically got talked into it by a bunch of like sailors who were on leave into a drinking contest, and that was it. And he never liked, whenever he was on interviews, he never liked the subject being brought up. You know, he wanted to talk about his acting, but everybody would always talk about his drinking.
Yeah.
And
it would be the same thing on Letterman when like Richard Harris would come on. He'd always want to
Peter O'Toole.
Yeah, he'd want an O'Toole story.
Yeah. I mean, but Oliver Reed, and it's funny because he's kind of in this movie. In the book, that's kind of how I pictured Bertrand, looking like Oliver Reed. He's got burly, the dark hair. Yeah, I picture him like that. And he turns in a good performance. And he, and that's the thing. The character is, and this is where the Jekyll and Hyde thing comes in. He can't control it. He tries to control it, being a werewolf, but he can't. And that's his curse. He hates it. He hates doing it,
Here's the thing, and we talked about this. There was. It's not an overwhelmingly popular. It's a popular movie. It's a Hammer classic. It's the only werewolf movie that they attempted to do. But it wasn't without its shortcomings. Many people say.
Oh yeah.
And you and I had talked about some of them too. And I was looking at some of the reviews from like the New York Times at the time or Variety. There was criticism. Like I'm looking here, it says not enough action.
That's true.
It's very
slow burn.
There's very limited exposure to the actual werewolf. Until you get to maybe the last 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, we don't actually.
20 minutes.
That was my big quibble with the movie, is that we didn't see him enough as a werewolf.
I think another one was not particularly frightening, but it was a first-class effort.
Yeah.
Like, it's you're watching a good movie, but it's not necessarily a frightening werewolf movie, which is, it's this kind of ironic, paradoxical kind of, thing to say about a Hammer movie. Like, this is a first-class effort. You can tell everybody's giving their best, but it's not all that scary.
No, it's not. It's not really, because there were a lot of other Hammer movies that were way scarier. If
you look at The Curse of Frankenstein or Horror of Dracula or Prince of Darkness, or we're going to do Brides of Dracula next week. Those were scary movies.
Oh, I know.
But this was, it was so infested. It's very much like what I just covered with From Hell, where like I was just so taken aback by the cruelty.
Oh yeah,
and the tragedy in the movie of the women of that time. You're like, oh my God, this is just all. I mean, you literally did feel like you were visiting hell. And so there was so much tragedy in this, and so much cruelty, and just so much injustice. About what was happening to his mother. The situation in general, and that he was just doomed from the get-go. Like
there's no way out for this guy. There's no way out. It's a shame. And it's not, again, it diverts, though, from Jekyll and Hyde in that, Dr. Jekyll drank some potion and became Mr. Hyde or something. In this, it's not that. It's just from birth. He's a werewolf.
Cursed. He's literally cursed.
As far as that was my biggest disappointment, that we didn't see enough werewolf. However, I do think he's one of the better looking werewolves.
He was a scary ass monster. Because it's Oliver Reed, and Oliver Reed is kind of rough. I mean, I'm not making fun of him, but he's a little rough around the edges, when it comes to looking, And,
but I think it works.
Absolutely. He was a scary creature.
Yeah, he's a way scarier werewolf than Lon Chaney Jr.
Yeah.
I mean, I never thought Lon Chaney looked like a wolf enough.
I'll tell you what, that introductory scene where you just zoom right in on his eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like the tears are coming and the
Mhm.
howling's going and the eyes are darting back and forth like that. And you're like,
And
oh
they're
my.
bloodshot. Yeah.
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 And you're like, oh my God. Like, what?
Yeah,
I
I
remember the
just-
first time I saw that, it scared the living shit out of me. I was a little
Yeah.
kid.
And he's one of the better looking werewolves. I have like a ranking of werewolves, but he's one of the better ones. Again, like the Lon Chaney, again, 1941, it was a different time. Nobody was expecting that. I don't think anybody knew about werewolves.
I'm sure that, well, I mean, you did have, like I said, we had Werewolf of London, but I'm sure for its time, it must have scared the hell out of people.
Oh, I know. I just think it's funny that, like, you know, there's this guy who turns into a werewolf, yet he's wearing a nice button-down shirt and a belt and trousers. He's like all dressed all nice. At least in this, he like ripped out of his clothes a little bit. But like in subsequent werewolf movies, they rip out of their clothes. You know, it makes sense. But in like the Lon Chaney one, he's wearing a shirt and a belt and pants, you know. But it was funny. It kind of takes away from it for me with that. But and again, for 1941, and that it's always a treat for me in werewolf movies to see what they look like, because it must be such a cool job for the makeup artist to make the scariest werewolf you can imagine. I mean, 1941, they did the best they could with that. I mean, I think he kind of looks like a donkey, but that's just, you know, he's just he's got like a weird, like Bob Ross afro.
It was 80 years ago.
Exactly.
You know, it was 80 years ago, and it was not the first of its kind, but it was damn close.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I get that the makeup's probably uncomfortable, and who knows what Oliver Reed's situation was. Maybe he didn't want to wear the makeup a lot, you know. Maybe that's why he was only a werewolf for the last 15 minutes of the movie.
I think that this was just kind of the way that they wrote it.
Yeah. Because again, like some werewolves are really cool looking, and that's another thing I always look forward to in a werewolf movie is the moment they change. You know, that is always supposed to be an awesome scene.
Yeah.
Now in this movie, they kind of did the Lon Chaney thing where they just used
stop motion
or rotoscoping or whatever. I think American Werewolf in London probably has one of the best transformation scenes.
Sure.
Another one, believe it or not, there's a great werewolf transformation scene. You don't scoff or anything. It's the Monster Squad. The werewolf in that, when he turns into the werewolf in the phone booth, it is a fantastic scene. I think that was Rick Baker that did that. It was him or Stan Winston, one of those guys. But the transformation of him, of his back tearing through the shirt, it was an awesome scene. And I always look forward to that in werewolf movies.
Yeah.
But then it can border on ridiculous, you know, like you were saying with the howling. You know, where they're 8 feet tall or something like that.
Yeah, and they've got like ears that are like this long. People are standing there looking at them change, you know. And what the hell are you doing? You know? But yeah, I mean, you know, it's
But this was, again, he was one of the, Ollie Reed was one of the scarier werewolves, you know. And
he was a scary werewolf. I think the setting in which it changed had a lot to do with how scary it was. Like that scene. The initial scene where he's like he's just like really stiff in the casino is kind of I wasn't terribly impressed. Yeah. But when you first see him and you know he's attacking some people's drunks at the casino or whatever, that's one thing. But that scene in the jail.
Yeah, where he attacks the guard,
Well, where he attacks the guy who's in the cell with him.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that poor guy.
Oh, man, that poor bastard is just trapped in the cell with him as he's changing. And I was like, oh, my God. And he gives that one turnaround that I used in the intro with the music, that look on his face. And you're just like, holy shit.
Yeah, that poor drunk, the drunk in cell number one.
I don't know why Hammer never made any more werewolf movies.
Maybe. I don't think it did well.
I don't think it did well either, but they like if you had kept with more of that, you know, more of those types of claustrophobic scenes inside the jail. Because once he started moving, like, and we're getting towards the end of the film now. Once he started getting towards the out into society and like the crowd chases him, it loses something.
Yeah, I was really disappointed with that. Like nobody was scared of him.
No.
You know, and he's the book, and I'm not giving it away. The ending of the book is 1,000 times better. But it's just like, yeah, like he should be in that crowd tearing people up, and instead he's going across the buildings and trying to hide from everybody. I guess, like you pointed out, you know, as an animal, he's just, you know, frightened and
trying to get away. And, you know.
But like all these people are just they're not even scared of this thing.
Yeah, the story, the script has some holes in it.
Yeah, it's like
the script.
Werewolf, I certainly wouldn't be like, oh look, he's up there. I'd be crapping my pants.
I'd be going back in my damn house getting my gat.
Yeah, really, like it's you know, it's
the holes in the story for the time. I mean, if you look at Chaney's movie,
yeah.
You know, there are a number of holes in that, or I would argue acting performances that are less than stellar.
Yeah.
Now it is the universal representation, so I'm not disrespecting it. You know, it's been 80 years.
Yeah, and who knows as far as them not making another werewolf movie. I know again it didn't do well commercially. Maybe Hammer. I mean, look, Dracula was their cash cow.
Yeah.
I mean, look how many movies they did, and they got worse. I mean, there was that one we were talking about where Christopher Lee refused to say any lines in the movie because the script was so bad.
Yeah, and they've got that one 1972 AD.
Yeah,
and you're like, oh man, and like Christopher Lee is like a silhouette. Sitting at the desk, you know, and Van Helsing's trying, like, who am I talking to across this?
And at that point, I think Christopher Lee had just had it, but you know, he was getting a paycheck.
I would imagine they both were, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, and that's the thing too. I mean, I don't know as far as typecasting, I don't know, but like in Lon Chaney Jr.'s case, look what happened to him. He got typecast in that role. Mm-hmm. He played the Wolfman a bunch of times, whether he liked to or not. I don't know. He was actually a decent actor.
He never did anything outside of that.
He did. He was in High Noon.
That's right. He was in High Noon.
He was the former sheriff in High Noon. He was really good in that too.
Yeah,
and that was 1950.
Yeah,
but he, you know, I think
he was another problem. He was a terrible alcoholic as well.
Yeah, and I think it developed because of his acting job and that kind of stuff. And he didn't get a lot of parts, but he was
like Lugosi.
Yeah. Oh, look. Yeah.
Lugosi
was a mess.
Lugosi, he couldn't embrace the typecast.
No, he couldn't.
Whereas Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, they did embrace the typecast and went on to be celebrated. You know.
And who knows what the story with Oliver Reed was? Who knows? I don't know if he didn't want to be typecast or like I said, I think maybe they just were like, okay, we did a werewolf movie. It didn't do well. Let's move on and do something better to recoup our.
This is another movie directed by Terrence Fisher.
Yeah, he did a lot of them, right?
He was Hammer's go-to director. He directed a lot of those Dracula movies: Prince of Darkness, Horror of Dracula. He directed The Curse of Frankenstein, which, for my money, is probably in the top 2 Frankenstein versions of all time. Peter Cushing. His interpretation of Victor Frankenstein is one of the best I've ever seen.
Cushing was the man. I love Cushing.
He just plays an evil bastard.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, you've never like Christopher. I mean,
he was good at that.
Well, Victor von Frankenstein is a mad scientist, but he's not evil. Peter Cushing takes it to the next level.
Yeah,
and just turns him into an evil bastard. You're like, wow.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny. The first time I saw that, I was kind of like skeptical because I was like, wait, Christopher Lee's playing the monster?
Yeah.
But, you know, because I didn't really see. He doesn't strike me as the monster. But I was like, damn, he's good.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was.
Yeah. I love Christopher Lee's one of my favorite actors ever.
Hammer took these movies. They made the Curse of Frankenstein, and then it was a hit. And they just decided to make a series of movies loosely based on all those Universal classics. Mm-hmm. And that must have run for almost 40 years.
Yeah,
Hammer films.
And that's the thing. I like that they made their own stories. Okay, they weren't aping with the Curse of Dracula, whatever. They weren't aping the Browning version. They weren't aping Stoker's story or anything like that. They took the elements and made it their own. That's the same thing with this story, with Curse of the Werewolf. They took certain elements from the Werewolf of Paris, but they made their own movie. They kept the themes. Like I said, they kept his themes of loneliness and the Jekyll and Hyde thing, and the whole thing about love keeping him from becoming a werewolf.
Yeah.
That was an important part of it, that he fell in love and he went for a long stretch not being a werewolf.
Right.
The
love of his family, and then he falls in love as a man.
Yeah.
He meets a woman and he wants to run away with her. Yeah. I
thought that was neat. And again, for a werewolf movie, it's very different. And I like that. And it's still, I think, even if you compare it to, there's no other werewolf movie like it. I said while you were out getting a book, there was another adaptation of this, of the book. I believe it was in the 70s. I don't know anything about it, though. But it's still an original werewolf movie.
And it's still better than The Howling, thank God.
Or that Benicio del Toro remake.
I regret to say that may be coming up on my something shitty.
Yeah,
it breaks my heart. That. Yeah, I said the same thing. Everything that's been on something shitty, I think. I've said, this is a movie I wanted to like, with the exception of that Jason Goes to Hell. Nobody.
Oh yeah.
I especially said that when it came to Stoker's Dracula. You're like, you want to like it. You want it to be good.
Mm-hmm.
I own a double feature of that and Shelley's Frankenstein on Blu-ray.
Yeah. I think Shelley's Frankenstein is probably the last time I've seen Frankenstein, like a good interpretation of it. Yeah. That's a good movie. I don't think it gets the love it deserves, but it's good.
Frankenstein really doesn't. Frankenstein has kind of been relegated.
Yeah.
To the,
he's not scary. And that's the thing. Like, I think, and I didn't know this because I had never read the book. I saw the movie. I didn't know that Frankenstein killed people. Granted, accidentally, but except for Elizabeth when he kills her, which that scene was pretty gruesome in the movie. But I think because Frankenstein's kind of a softie. And, as far as the other monsters go, although Hollywood has made Dracula into a softie, and we talked about that before, but...
we were talking about it last week with Hammer. I think that, the most tragic, more even than the werewolf story, is the Frankenstein story.
Oh, yeah,
But with Dracula, Christopher Lee cements the sexualized... sort of template for future Draculas.
But
he's not romantic. He's not romantic.
No,
but no. I watched some of the. I did some research on one of the on the horror of Dracula, and there's a scene there where he bites Mina. Hammer's version of Mina, and it's just after we know that she's been bitten, but Van Helsing and her husband don't know it. And she asked Terence Fisher, "How do you want me to play it? I'm going to see these people for the first time since I've been bitten." And he goes, "I want you to walk into the house like you've just had the best sex of your life all night."
That's funny.
So Hammer has set the template for sexualizing Dracula. Which we go all the way, I would say, to Gerard Butler in Dracula 2000, where he's got Jerry Ryan as a bride and this gorgeous Spanish woman as a bride, and all these
Jerry
different
Ryan,
things.
Wow.
Yeah, but he's Hammer also sets the tone for sexualizing the brides. And Bill was like, once you turn a Dracula movie on nowadays, you want to see what the brides. It's almost like a Bond girl,
Yeah.
What's the bride going to be like?
That's one point in Bram Stoker's Dracula.
I had a photo of Monica Bellucci rising out of that bed. 25 years old. You're like, okay. Nobody's fighting that off. It ain't happening.
Yeah, but no, it's again, as far as I haven't seen that many werewolf movies. But again, this is
Dog Soldiers, haven't you?
Yeah, we watched that one. That was good, and I like that because that was different. You know, yeah, that one, and the Del Toro one, and other movies that have werewolves in them. But it's but no, like I said, it was, for what it was decent. I just, like, again, my quibble was that it was a little slow moving, and there just wasn't a lot of werewolf action in it.
Needed more action.
You need to see more werewolf.
That's in your werewolf movie.
If you're for the last 15 minutes, it's
I feel like Jeff Goldblum. You are going to have some dinosaurs. Dinosaur tour.
Really.
Hello, does this thing work?
Yeah.
No, I mean no disrespect, because it's Hammer Films, and what the fuck films have we made? But I think it's a solid observation to say, you could have given us some more, and
And
so
again, Oliver Reed turned in a great performance. Again, he was only 23 when he did that, because he was doing a lot of theater, and he had done a lot of supporting parts in the 50s, and this was his first lead, and after that, his career took off. And
good for him.
And
he had another 40 years.
Yeah, and I think he kind of, and like you were saying, it worked for him to be the werewolf, because he was rugged. He is kind of bulky.
Yeah, he looks like a bear.
Yeah, and he's got that great face that looks almost kind of animalistic or brutish,
Yeah, he's got a bit. He does have a bit of a feral look. There's no mistake about that one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's. Unless you object, that's a pretty good place to close it out. Yeah. Okay. So,
yeah.
I guess that'll do it for tonight. It's a good movie. If you get a chance, check it out. Any opportunity to check some Hammer films is not a wasted opportunity. Give it a shot. We hope you enjoy it. Thank you again to Ryan for joining me again tonight. If you like this, if you see this video, please like or follow up with, if you feel it's worthy, a subscription to the channel. We'll be back next week with some new episodes and some new content, one of which, at least at this point, next Wednesday, Eric and I will be back to work on First Blood. So take care, everybody. Ryan, stick around if you can, and I'll talk to you after the outro. Good day, everybody. Have a great weekend.